The following program is a color feature presentation on the HSN television network. This Week in Pro Football is brought to you by Hager Slacks. They just fit better naturally. And by American Motors and your local American Motors dealer.
Hi, I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire.
This week in the first half of our show, we'll see how Cleveland knocked Miami out of first place and how Baltimore took over undisputed first place in the AFC East.
We'll also see how one big play led to victory for both Buffalo and Atlanta.
We'll see how Green Bay kept Philadelphia winless.
And we'll see how San Diego battled back to tie a surprising Houston team in one of the week's wildest games.
We'll see all of these games and more right after this message.
In San Diego, there's a new set of mini backs. Dickie Post has returned, and there's a new addition. None other than the original Kansas City Chief mini back, number 25, Mike Garrett. Well, last Sunday, the mini backs and the rest of the Charger running attack were stifled by a fired-up Houston Oilers defense. The Chargers' longest run from scrimmage was 14 yards by Mike Garrett. The Oilers were being counted out after Charlie Johnson's injury, but number 17, Jerry Rome, ignited the Oiler attack. Number 23, Jerry Levias, gave the Chargers fits with his unique style of pass receiving and punt returning. Jerry Rome turned fourth down into first down by running with the football. Rome accounted for one touchdown himself by faking into the line and running with the football again. Rome's passing accounted for 266 yards and two more touchdowns, one to 89 Alvin Reed, the other to Charlie Joyner, number 18, as the Oilers built up a 31-14 lead in the third quarter. The Charger attack, dormant most of the afternoon, got one touchdown from a John Hadel pass to tight end Willie Frazier, number 83. But the man who put the Lightning back in the Lightning Brigade was a wide receiver who's not caught many passes this season, a young fellow named Lance Allworth, number 19. Just the threat of an Allworth bomb was enough to set up one San Diego touchdown. The game's biggest play came late in the fourth quarter. It was a Marty Domrey's bomb, which was underthrown to Lance Allworth. 80 yards later, Lance Allworth scored the touchdown, which tied the Oilers 31-31. On a day when both Houston and San Diego proved they had the weapons to cause anyone trouble the rest of the year.
Meanwhile, in Milwaukee, things were not much quieter, as the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers tried to outdo each other's generosity. Presented with several early scoring chances in his first start, Eagle rookie quarterback Rick Arrington, number 11, threw 6 quick completions in 10 attempts, but 3 were received by the grateful men in the dark shirts, and 1 was returned 76 yards for a touchdown by number 43, safety Doug Hart. Once Arrington plunked his receiver Gary Ballman right on the numbers at the goal line. But the results were distressingly familiar, as number 48, rookie cornerback Ken Ellis, carried 60 yards the other way. Arrington had one moment of glory as he coolly sidestepped the Packer rush and speared Gary Ballman for an 80-yard touchdown. But of course the play was nullified by a penalty. Another Eagle rookie, Billy Wallach, number 9, had his moment of glory too. He took a Packer kickoff and was long gone until Ken Ellis, number 48, ruined his fun too. When number 16, Norm Snead, entered the game, the Eagle attack picked up. The play of the day was a Snead pass to Ben Hawkins, whose head was almost removed, but whose body ran 65 yards to the right goal line. But for the winless Eagles, it was mostly another game full of mysterious reasons why they are winless. Who can reason why the gods of the gridiron smile on some and always frown on others? The Packer offense was led by Bart Starr. Green Bay managed to survive the wild-eyed enthusiasm of the Eagle defense, and Donnie Anderson, number 44, had another of his best days. Anderson swept to 1 touchdown, and the clincher was scored when Bart Starr faked to Anderson and found rookie tight end Rick McGeorge floating free as a bird through the Eagles secondary. Final score, winless Philadelphia 17, grateful Green Bay 30.
Well, Pat, I guess people have been quitting professional football teams since the beginning of the game, but recently they seem to get a lot of attention when they do. Speaking of people like Chip Oliver, Megacy, a linebacker, Rick Sortune, and I don't know, I always felt like pro football was a game of sacrifice and sort of a Spartan way of life. You like physical contact, you like to go out on Sunday and perform in front of people, and, well, with millions of people now watching pro football on Sunday and, of course, on television, evidently the people of this country certainly like professional football, but If you don't like it and you don't like the regimentation and the physical demands it makes, then you can quit. But in the old days, they simply packed it away and didn't come to practice.
It's a matter of dedication, I think, Tom, and I think you'll agree that if you're not prepared to give it 100%, then you make a mistake, and for whatever reasons they quit, that's their own business. But if you are not prepared to go ahead and hang in there 100%, then you might as well get out.
And I think some of our products can speak for themselves, people like Gale Sayers, John Unitas, Mr. Gifford, Mr. Summeroff, and the New York Giants. So if you don't like football, don't play it. But a lot of people still enjoy watching that game on Sunday. Pat, what's next?
Well, Tom, last week, one big play led to victory for both the Falcons and the Bills. Let's look at those games right now.
At Shea Stadium, the Bills faced the Jets minus Joe Namath, who was missing for the first time in 78 regular season games. His substitute, Al Woodall, must have been feeling the pressure, as he had trouble handling the snap from center early in the game. When the snap wasn't mishandled, Woodall was manhandled, this time by number 82, Al Cowlings. Even his receivers seemed to be fighting him, as when he did complete a pass, Pete Lammons fumbled it when hit by Paul Guidry, number 59. The Bills scored following the break when Dennis Shaw hit Haven Moses. But the touchdown was nullified by offensive interference, and Buffalo settled for a Grant Guthrie field goal and a 3-0 halftime lead. In the second half, Woodall began hitting his receivers and moved the Jets to 2 field goals and a 6-3 lead, as the Jets appeared ready to avenge an earlier defeat at the hands of the Buffalo Bills. Then came the big play of the game, as Shaw teamed with Haven Moses again, this time for a 40-yard pickup. It set up Wayne Patrick's 3-yard score as the Bills beat the Jets for the second time this season. Final score 10-6 Buffalo.
Meanwhile, the Falcons prepared to face the Saints in a game that is always a battle. The Falcons have fallen on hard times after being in the division race earlier in the season, but the Saints have been rising to a peak after last week's tie with division-leading San Francisco. And as the teams made ready, coaches Van Brocklin and Fears got together to chew the fat. Atlanta owned the first half as Bob Berry hit Paul Flatley to start a drive. And Harmon Wages, number 5, dove 1 yard to finish it as the Falcons took a 9-0 lead. Then Ed Hargett found Dan Abramowitz behind number 36, Ken Reeves, as the Saints fought back. Bill Kilmer and Ken Burrow brought them closer. These two teamed up again for a 55-yard touchdown, but a penalty nullified both the play and the Saints' comeback hopes. The big play of this game occurred in the third quarter as number 20, Tom McCauley, rambled 77 yards for a touchdown that put the game out of reach. Added to that was a berry pass to Todd Snyder as the Falcons prevailed 32-14. And at least one coach's tired jaws wore a smile. We'll have more exciting action on This Week in Pro Football right after this message.
This week, the Miami Dolphins will get a chance to regain the lofty status they lost last week when Don Shula's new Dolphins meet Shula's old Chargers, the Baltimore Colts. Now, last week, the Cleveland Browns shut out the Dolphins while the Colts made patsies of the Patriots.
In Baltimore, the surging Colt defense, led by number 81, rookie Billy Newsome, decapitated the Boston Patriot offense. For the second straight week, the Joe Kapp-led Patriots could not put a touchdown on the board. Kapp was intercepted 4 times, and the Boston rushing game was limited to 45 yards. In the meantime, the venerable John Unitas was teaching a course in cool play calling and complete passes to old toughs like John Mackey. When Mackey was tied up, rookie Jack Maitland caught it from the old master. And just to prove what proud professionals the Baltimore Colts are, when this pass to Roy Jefferson was called back for holding, Unitas did it again with Jefferson until everybody got it right. And just for luck, he did it one more time with his old sidekick, Jimmy Orr. And Unitas and the Colts undid the Patriots 27-3.
Under a dazzling Miami sky, the Dolphins and the Cleveland Browns contended not only with each other, but with the brutal temperatures, cooking up to 100 degrees on the artificial surface in the Orange Bowl. For the Miamians, their moment in the sun came early, as this greasy to Warfield scrambled pass and catch was all the offense the Dolphins could deliver. Miami was able to penetrate Cleveland territory only twice. Interceptions such as this one by Walt Sumner kept the Browns breathing hotly near their goal. Erich Barnes locked onto this Bob Greasy pass as if it really was a greased pig, not just a pigskin. Bill Nelson completed 23 of 29 passes, mastering the Miami zone and shredding the pressure-cooked Dolphin defense. Linebacker Dale Lindsey romped over the red-hot rug with this interception, 56 yards for the game-breaking score. On a day that Don Shula said conditioning would make the difference, Miami suffered the first shutout in 3 years as the Browns devour the Dolphins 28-0.
In the second half of our show, we'll see how Oakland broke the Monday night jinx.
We'll also see how Detroit remained tied for first in the NFC Central.
And we'll see how San Francisco took over undisputed first place in the NFC West.
We'll see how a pair of upsets resulted in another tie for first in the NFC East.
And in our feature, Pat, we'll see how recently retired running back Ernie Green of the Cleveland Browns has launched upon a new and interesting career.
We'll see that feature, and we'll have more exciting action on This Week in Pro Football.
The man, Ernie Green, the number 48. For 7 seasons in Cleveland, he shared a backfield position with 2 of the finest runners the game has known. And it was his blocking that helped make Jim Brown and Leroy Kelly the great stars they were.
I got just as much satisfaction out of blocking as perhaps any person could, because this was my contribution. It was my thing. I took pride in the fact that I could block, and I thought I was pretty good at it.
But Green was also an outstanding ball carrier and annually ranked among the leaders in the league. Football is a brutal, battering game, and no one deals with its violence more than a running back. The result is inevitably pain.
I didn't think that my knee was really hurt as badly as it was, because at the time that I was hit, my leg was off the ground. And I saw this one guy coming, and I misjudged the guy, and I had my leg up, and his helmet hit me right in the front of my leg and just crushed it. I don't think it would have taken very much medical knowledge or experience to see that the knee was in pretty bad shape, because it had gotten to the point that it was shifting. You know, I could take it and make it move around quite a bit. It wasn't a very pretty sight either. I think most men feel like they can handle pain. I wasn't very good at it, but I handled it because I had to.
On December 21st, 1968, Ernie Green carried the ball for the last time.
The one thing that I have to refer back to, the last time I carried the ball as a pro football player, I scored a touchdown. It was a miserable season for me personally, and I never forget some of the pain that I endured while recovering. And I thought about it. I said, no, I didn't know if it was worth that. The more I thought about it, the more I concluded that, you know, I didn't need that kind of agony. I mentioned to people when I talked to them that when I started playing football, I realized that I was going to play until I became too old to play or until I was injured. And I just happened to get old and injured at the same time.
Ernie Green is representative of the contemporary professional athlete. The bright young men who are as educated, sophisticated, and sensitive as their coaches and employers. In his primary occupation as an executive at Case Western Reserve University, Green is wrapped in his role as advisor to student affairs.
The parallel from football to college administrators, I think there's a parallel. As a football player, I worked with people, and the last year that I was a player, I was a captain, and I had to understand their problems. So I think the training that I had as captain and the discipline that I had to go through as a football player, it's working out very well for me as a college administrator. In college, I studied sociology. I've always been interested in meeting and talking with people, and I think young people have been my bag, so to speak. And it gives me a great deal of satisfaction to sit and discuss problems with them. Nowadays, many young people believe that if you're over 30, you're in a generation gap. And I get a big kick out of listening to them and sharing some of the difficulties.
Ernie Green has prepared well for a future after football, and his success is reflected by the words of Robert Frost. No memory of having starred atones for later disregard, nor keeps the end from being hard.
Until last week, no team that had won a Monday night game was able to win their next game. Last week, however, both Oakland and Washington followed their Monday night game with victories, and they both won with veteran quarterbacks, one of whom was not Darryl LaMonica.
In Oakland, the resurgent Raiders were looking for their third win in a row. Their opponents were the hapless Pittsburgh Steelers, led by number 12 Terry Bradshaw, who seems to be living in the eye of a hurricane. And last Sunday, he was swept down in the black and silver vortex time after time. But the ever-undaunted Bradshaw sprinted right and arced a skyrocket to number 33, John Fuqua, who galloped in for the score, which unfortunately for Pittsburgh was nullified by a penalty. Still, the Louisiana Laser punched the ball goalward. He hit Ron Shanklin near the end zone. And then he beamed one to tight end Dennis Hughes, and the Steelers were in good shape. That is until Oakland unleashed their prize rookie tight end, Raymond Chester, number 87. Chester caught 3 touchdown passes, as well as this one that was called back. Darryl LaMonica, number 3, hit him on this one, but Darryl soon left the game with an injury. LaMonica's backup, 43-year-old George Blanda, number 16, took over and kept the ball spinning toward Chester, who is 21 years George's junior. By now, the Steelers were only spectators at the Raymond Chester show, and they watched bedazzled as Oakland's third great strike-from-anywhere receiver cut a swath to the end zone where he was deservedly congratulated. And lest we forget, there was always Blanda to wonderful Warren Wells, number 81, performing his usual atrocities on the opposing secondary. For the Steelers, a tough day. For the Raiders, a 31-14 victory salute and an ever tougher offense. Are you listening, Kansas City?
In Washington, Cincinnati's coach Paul Brown did not look like a man with a severe quarterback problem. But in Greg Cook's absence, Brown has tried everything to strengthen that position. Finally, Coach Brown settled on Virgil Carter, number 11. Carter is backed by a good Bengal defense that has shown constant improvement against its opponents all year. But the Bengal offense has lacked the spark it had under Cook's sure hand. And against the Redskins, the Bengals turned to a razzle-dazzle style of play designed to turn on some lights on their side of the scoreboard. Jess Phillips, number 30, added some go power to the attack, but this year the Bengals seem to be snake bit. Success is too heady a brew for them, and when they're going well, they're stopped cold by their own mistakes. The Redskins had a little of that kind of trouble themselves as Larry Brown's touchdown run was nullified by a penalty. Brown's lack of luck gave quarterback Sonny Jurgensen the notion to try it himself. So he took off in the classic Jurgensen style, the sleek swiftness of a rain barrel on legs. But Sonny is paid to throw, and Charlie Taylor, number 42, is paid to catch those throws. A nice arrangement since each is so proficient at his job. Proficiency was on display as Sonny hit Charlie for 2 touchdowns, which were more than enough as the Redskins racked up a 20-0 win over the beleaguered Bengals.
You know, Tom, you hear a lot of discussion about whether the players of today are better than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and whether or not football today is better than it was during the periods of the 40s and 50s. One thing I'm sure is better, and I don't know about the players, I think that's a matter of opinion, but one thing I'm sure is better, and that's the special teams, the special units, particularly the kickers, are a lot better than they were 10 years ago. I know I always felt that I did a good job if I could kick a little bit better than 50%, but I saw a guy in Kansas City, Jan Stenerud, on Sunday play against Dallas, who has hit 14 out of 16 for the year, this year, and watch him work with his holder, Glenn Dawson, and then with his center, E.J. Holub, and that's got to be one of the best acts of place kicking that's ever put together. I watched him in practice. He didn't miss at all in practice. He must have kicked 30 times and didn't miss a one. I watched Holub snap the ball to Len Dawson, the holder, perfectly every time with the laces to the front. They know exactly how many times that ball's going to spin between the time it leaves his hands and gets back to Dawson. And then, of course, Stenerud's got one of the great legs that's ever kicked a football. In fact, I was just absolutely amazed at the fact that on one kickoff, he not only kicked the ball out of the end zone, but he kicked it into the stands, behind the end zone, into the crowd, and the stands about 10 feet high at that particular point.
Pat, you also said that even though he's a side saddle type kicker, he really goes straight into the ball almost, doesn't he?
He comes almost straight at it. Most of your soccer-style kickers come from a severe angle, but he comes almost straight in.
That's something. You know a lot about kicking, too.
Well, I can remember a lot about it. What's next time?
Well, Pat, last week, 2 division leaders had to come from behind to win. Let's look at those games right now.
Chicago middle linebacker Dick Butkus, number 51, is football's most fierce competitor. A man who is able to generate so much enthusiasm within himself that on every play, every member of the opposing team becomes a marked man, eligible to become part of the Butkus experience. But of all his inspired performances, it would be difficult to recall anyone more inspired than last Sunday's against the Detroit Lions. This was the second meeting of the season for the two clubs. Detroit won the first game at home, but now in Wrigley Field, the Butkus-led Bears made any hopes of a similar outcome painful ones indeed. So ferocious was the hitting that Lion ball carriers resembled men dancing through a cow pasture at midnight. As they had done in the first game, the Bears took a 7-0 first quarter lead on a pass from Jack Concannon, number 11, to Dick Gordon, number 45. But as also happened in the first game, the Bears began making mistakes that eventually cost them the game. The Lions recovered a fumble to nullify a second quarter drive and intercepted 3 passes to provide themselves with scoring opportunities. Wayne Rasmussen got one in the third quarter that led to one of 3 Errol Mann field goals. As the fourth quarter began, Bill Munson, number 19, found Earl McCullough, number 25, deep in the end zone, and the Lions got the lead 13-7. Both the teams then exchanged field goals to create the 16-10 outcome. But the fact that the Lions had won left at least one man looking for an explanation.
Two of pro football's high-flying Cinderella teams met in San Francisco's Kezar Stadium. 49er quarterback John Brody has been warming up for a championship for 14 years. And even though they've been close on occasion, they've never won as much as a division title. But Coach Dick Nolan, now in his third year, has the 49ers believing their time is near. The Denver Broncos have never even had a winning season, but Lou Saban has whipped the Broncos into a winner, and they seem to be feeling the same things as the 49ers. One thing that has helped the Broncos is the discovery of a running attack. Willis Crenshaw, number 33, acquired from the Cardinals, gives Denver another quality back to pair with superstar Floyd Little, number 44. Floyd has been Denver's most lethal weapon for 3 years. The 49ers found out how lethal in the first quarter when he sped 80 yards for a touchdown that gave Denver the lead 7-3. Another facet of Denver's improvement is the defense, a leading unit against the run and an improving one against the pass. While the 49ers were notating Denver's improvement, the Broncos scored another touchdown, this time on a pass from Pete Lisk to Crenshaw, and Denver led at the half 14-6. But Brody and the 49ers have been waiting too long for the opportunity before them. And on the 5th play of the second half, John Eisenbarger raced 61 yards for a touchdown, and the 49ers were ready to tee off. San Francisco's secondary began picking off passes with regularity. Mel Phillips' interception set up the go-ahead field goal. And Gene Washington, number 18, sprung loose to set up another as the 49ers began to wear down the youthful Broncos. But the gutsy Broncos were in it until the very end, and with 5 seconds left, were on San Francisco's 20-yard line. However, Pete Lisk's desperation heave was intercepted by number 52, Skip Vanderbunt. The 49ers have been waiting for a long time, and they finally seem to have the talent and the spirit to ensure their share of victory. The 49ers could run a long way in 1970.
Last week, the St. Louis Cardinals were crushed by the supposedly soft part of their schedule, while the Dallas Cowboys bore through the bedrock and finally won a big one. St. Louis was upset by the Giants, while Dallas surprised the Chiefs as the NFC East was deadlocked again.
In Kansas City, the Chiefs relied on their time-tested General Lynn Dawson, while Dallas looked to rookie setback Dwayne Thomas to supply the elusive magic needed for a big-game victory. Both teams possessed identical 3-2 records, and both have looked less like champions with each passing week. Though for both teams this game was a test of their temper and their talent, Kansas City was a big favorite. In the past, the Chiefs have always been ready for big games. The Cowboys have not. History's cruel repetition seemed to stamp Dallas losers as Kansas City took an early lead 7-0 on Ed Podolak's touchdown sweep. Defensively, Kansas City's Big Red Marauders mashed and manhandled quarterback Craig Martin. They crushed his spirit and his body, and Dallas seemed dead. But in the second half, the corpse awoke, wearing number 33 in white. Rookie Dwayne Thomas revived Dallas when he sprinted 47 yards on a draw play. Another view shows that Kansas City was unaware and unprepared for Thomas's speed as he blazed and limp-legged his way to a score. Thomas, who gained over 130 yards rushing against one of the toughest teams to run against in football, had a 74-yard screen pass called back by penalty. But it mattered little because today the Cowboys had a reservoir of surprises and speed. Craig Morton caught the Chiefs in a multiple blitz and lobbed a pass to Bob Hayes. It was an 89-yard foot race between Hayes and the Chiefs' fastest man, Emmett Thomas. It was a mismatch. Leading 27-10, the Dallas defense towed out and flamed in on Lynn Dawson. The Chiefs' multiple offense and moving pocket melted from the heat of an alert Cowboy secondary, led by number 20, Mel Renfro. Kansas City inched back in the last quarter as its high-flying defense and two Jan Stenerud field goals combined to cut the Cowboy lead to 11 points, 27-16. But in the end, it was Lynn Dawson flat on his back in the blackness of his own end zone as Dallas conceivably collected the most important victory in its history, 27-16.
The St. Louis Cardinals came to New York and were scrambled by Fran Tarkenton and the New York Giants. Rarely did St. Louis display the rushing crunch that had battered and bruised the NFC's Eastern Division. The Cardinals scored 2 touchdowns, one on a short vault by MacArthur Lane, the other on a picture-scoring grab by Dave Williams. But for most of the bleak day in Yankee Stadium, St. Louis was betrayed by the often erratic arm of their quarterback, Jim Hart. Hart's miseries were a mixture of his own inaccuracy and a back-busting Giant defense. With his pocket often collapsing around him, Hart threw 2 interceptions and completed just 15 passes in 40 attempts. On the other hand, Giant quarterback Fran Tarkenton threw over or ran through the Cardinals at will. In the first half, Tarkenton threw 10 passes and completed all of them, 3 going for touchdown. The first went to a completely uncovered Aaron Thomas at the corner. Rookie Bob Tucker, a refugee from the Pottstown Firebirds, flowed free and easy through the Cardinals secondary and scored the Giants' second touchdown. All afternoon, Tarkenton found uncovered receivers and undressed the St. Louis secondary. Five Tarkenton touchdown passes, 2 going to Bob Tucker, gave New York a startling 35-17 victory. For the Giants, their 3rd straight win dropped St. Louis into a first-place tie with Dallas, and suddenly Fran Tarkenton was the only winning quarterback in town.
Well, Pat, this week some great new rivalries get underway. Don Shula takes his Dolphins back to his old stomping grounds, Baltimore's Memorial Stadium.
And Alex Webster takes his Giants from the Bronx to Long Island to meet the Jets.
Oh, that's going to be quite a game over there.
Should be.
And a couple of older rivalries are going to be pretty hot, too, like the Oakland Raiders meeting the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, Pat, you saw Kansas City last week. What do you think about that one?
Kansas City is a fine defensive team. They had sort of an off day against Dallas. I still like to pick them. I'll pick Kansas City.
I'm going to have to go with Oakland. LaMonica to those Blitnikoff, Wells, Raymond Chester. Maybe with Aaron Brown hurt, they can get a little time and work on Kansas City, huh?
Dallas had some success running to that particular side of the Kansas City defense, but I still like the Chiefs.
All right, and I'll stay, of course, with the Oakland Raiders. Now, about Minnesota and Detroit, each is 5-1. You're going to be at that game, aren't you?
I'll be at that game. I like Minnesota. I like their defense, and I like the way that Quazzo's got their offense operating now.
All right, Jimmy David's secondary can play man-to-man, and I think that'll be the difference, so by golly, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions.
I'm not unhappy with having Minnesota at all.
All you have are the 2 Super Bowl teams from last year. Okay, at any rate, we'll be back next week to show you what really happened. I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall, and we'll see you next week.
This Week in Pro Football has been brought to you by American Motors and your local American Motors dealer. By Hager Slacks. They just fit better naturally. Promotional consideration is provided by American Motors, makers of the bold new 1971 Javelin with styling so hairy, we even risk turning some people off. Javelin by American Motors. This has been a color feature presentation in cooperation with NFL Films through the facilities of Hughes Sports Network.